Thanks for our first three speakers for wonderful presentations. Now we have, just to give you some practical information, we'll have a question and answers now for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have the first coffee break. So the first question and answer will be for the three speakers that have held their presentation. So I would kindly ask the three of you, Dr. Michelle, Dr. Angels, and Dr. Ladislav, to take a seat up here. And we have a microphone, so we'll have questions asked here, of course, by microphone, taking one at a time, and we'll also follow the questions coming in online from the Zoom webinar. So about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a coffee break. So I hope you can manage to sit still for 20 more minutes, and we can start. Yes.
Hello. My question is for Angel about the scale. Are you studying this or developing this scale only for children or also for adults?
Yeah, it's any age, or all ages. Yes, we will apply to all patients of any age. Yes.
Can you specify in adults the range or up to what certain, how many years old was the?
No, because you have like a top of abilities that can be reached at any age, so it will be adjusted to different age ranges. So there's no problem. Yeah, theoretically, it could be applied to any age.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you. I have a question for Dr. Vyklicky. Have you tried any of your neurosteroids on the mouse that you made? And was it one that you had tested in the cells? Did it have the same response as it did in the cells?
To be honest, yes. We tried several times. The first many years ago to block neurodegeneration, and it worked. And we said, well, this is fantastic. It works perfectly well. And surprisingly, after injection of the steroids, there were no side effects, typical for many drugs that interacts with like MK801 or ketamine or something like this. So we were excited, and then we repeated the study for other purposes, and suddenly realized that the compound that we were injected, that was injected, breaks in 5 minutes to many other compounds. So there was a very obvious frustration that we didn't know which out of, I don't know, 10, at least maybe even more compounds had this effect, and whether the effect was related to action on NMDA receptors. Maybe it was on other receptors, because the neurosteroids, they have a tendency to affect almost all receptor channel types. So there's obvious need to have very stable receptor, that can't be easily decomposed and gets into the brain easily. Of course, the aim of the GMO mice was to test the animals, but it costs a lot. And if you have the animals in cage for 3 weeks, and to deliver each and every day a drug, and to be at least know that you're doing the concentration at reach is reasonable, and the outcome is not obvious. It's not easy to analyze on a biological level. So I got a little bit frustrated and turned out to zebrafish, which is more of the fun. And actually, we are on the beginning, and we see an effect of drugs. If you overdose the dose that has potentiating effect, you have something what looks like seizures. So, but we are really on the beginning. Sorry.
Thank you.
I have two questions, one for Dr. Garcia. For the scale, when do you have an idea of when you'll have the English version available? And in the meantime, would it be advisable for us to talk to doctors to use like the Rett syndrome one or the Angelman syndrome because they present sort of similar? The reason I ask is because we just had a Bailey test for our daughter, and of course, it didn't apply to her.
Okay, so well, considering the time that we invested in developing the scale in Spanish, I think for the translation and then validation, we at least need 1 year, being optimistic. And then if we should recommend a test to, in the meantime, evaluate patients, it's probably the Vineland test is the more appropriate to do that because it evaluates different aspects, different areas of the adaptive behavior, communication, daily living skills, motor function, and so on. And it's really available, so standardized, is widely used, so it will be the most recommended test. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My second question is for Michelle. For the Simon Searchlight Registry, we've gone through all the steps. So we're from Canada and we haven't done the blood work. And so how would that work for people who, like us, who are from other countries?
We go country by country for the consideration. So in the US, we have a contract with a lab, so we can send the blood kit to the families and they can make appointments with their local Quest labs and get the blood drawn, and then it gets delivered to our biorepository. Country by country, we make the consideration. So for example, some South American countries are withholding the kits going into the country and going out. So the kits are just not going to make it out in time. Canada in particular, province by province, is easier or more difficult. So for Ontario, for example, there is a possibility to get a blood drawn at a private lab. I think it's $75 Canadian. And then have it sent. So the other additional complication is we don't have any contracting in other countries. So finding someone to draw the blood is step one. And we within our ethics board cannot reimburse for that service, but we can pay for the shipping and handling of the kit coming in and out. So if you are within Canada, it's usually easier to get to our biorepository in time. So if anyone is interested, what people usually do is email us and we will see what we can do based on where you live.
Would we be able to access like a lab in Seattle, which is not too far from us? Because that would be another option.
Yeah. Yes. Being able to go to a Quest Labs in Seattle seems, if that is reasonable, absolutely. I think Vancouver also has this Life Labs. Yeah. So it's Life Labs that would be, if that would be easier, that's the company that's in Vancouver, Ontario, and I think Quebec, maybe not Quebec, okay. But that's the one that would do this private draw that doesn't need a doctor's requisition.
Okay. But and in terms of the annual follow-up, so we have completed, but we haven't had any like annual follow-up since we completed. This was about last year. So how does that work?
This is a good question. We transitioned our medical history from a phone call with a genetic counselor. So that's what I was doing earlier this year, was talking on the phone with families and doing that medical intake, to an online version. Our registry has just grown. So it's also, we've gotten feedback that families want to do this at whatever time of night that is reasonable, or day, all around the world. So we've transitioned to this online form. So our long-term online form got stalled because of this transition. So it will be coming and you will be emailed. We were hoping to get it out in the next few months. But as with anything, there's surprise delays. But yes, you will be emailed. Thank you so much for being on top of us.
Hi, guys. Thank you for your time. I have a question for all of you. So I'm just going to kind of go in order. Dr. Vyklicky, am I understanding correctly that in the zebrafish, you saw that in the mutant ones, the mutant 2B subunits were more prevalent than the non-affected 2Bs, right?
There was a deletion of 2A subunit. There are zebrafish is a little bit special. They have two orthologs of 2A called A and B,
Right.
and either or both, when they are deleted, they swim more or longer distance. And if you do the analysis they have the called bouts and frequency of bouts, and this is the frequency of bouts that is actually changed in the zebrafish.
Can you extrapolate from that for other GRINs, like the 2Bs, to say, because like, for example, I understand that in one MDA you can have, in one MDA receptor, you can have a 2B that is mutant and a 2B that is not mutant. And in that case, like, especially with regards to nonsense, I know that one seemed to have been a missense. How would that perform, or is that not something you can extrapolate yet?
We are in a business that we can't, this is not of interest to do something what other people did. Lonnie Wormuth and Sirotkin did experiments on 2B subunits, knock out the subunits and did some behavioral stuff. So I tend to avoid repeating the stuff, what they did, and focused on 2A subunit, which was actually a good decision because we see a change in the basic swimming pattern of the zebrafish. And the changes in expression of QRT-PCR, which we see, are remarkable. So we do now analysis of proteins and in the brain, and whether it's also recapitulated in to protein and so on.
Okay, fair enough. I understand. And Dr. Garcia, for those of us who are in other countries but are Spanish speakers, would the scale be available to us, or would we be able to submit to the scale?
Yeah.
Okay.
Once the scale is published for all Spanish-speaking countries or patients, yeah, it will be available. Yeah,
sure. Excellent. And when do you think that would be available for publication?
Yeah, but it depends. We still have to extend to complete 60 patients and then do the analysis and then publish everything. So I think it will take like a year, because submitting the paper, then the corrections and this, more or less. Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you. And then Michelle, I see that with the iPSCs, I think the patient community was under the impression that if people submitted samples, blood samples, at least I'm speaking for the US, where it seems to be a little more straightforward, that those cell lines would be turned into iPSCs. But I've had some family friends who have been in touch with Simon's, and the understanding is that there's a cap of 12 lines, or is that the same for all subunits?
So we're not necessarily capping per condition. But we are not doing 100% of the samples. So what we've done is we've sat down with researchers in the community and made sure to try to cover as much of the condition as possible with these different lines. So unfortunately we are unable to do all of them. But if there is one that we're missing, then absolutely, we're still reprogramming and making those selections. So it's possible, very possible scientifically, if it's needed, then we really want to address the need.
And if a patient were ready to have a relationship with a researcher, in that case, so we already know that there's someone on the other end that would request it, then that would perhaps be a reason to go ahead and move forward with an extra programming.
Yeah, that is very important to inform us about, because we are trying to create lines people will use. Yeah, that's why we didn't just go willy-nilly and make our own selection. We very much prioritize researchers' questions and what they want from these lines.
Excellent. And when you said we're the ones that are still in need, is that with relation to the subvariant groups, like whether it's a splice or nonsense or PTC?
More so if the researchers like, I am looking at this, this is the one I need.
What the researchers on your end have already requested. Okay, understood.
We want it going out to the labs as soon as we make them.
Excellent. Thank you all for your time.
Let's have
a follow-up question on that. Would you accept in your repository cell lines that have been established in different labs, or do you need to start from scratch with your contracted laboratories? Because that would be one way to easily amplify the collection.
Yes, then that's a really good question. We, for example, for our animal repository, we do accept, we've taken animal models from other labs around the world and put them into our animal repository so that we're hosting the distribution. And so the researcher, it takes it off their hands. With the iPSCs, I'm not the person in charge. We have accepted lines from other researchers, so that has happened. I don't know the exact circumstances. I will say that our lead iPSC person would be the best person for that specific question, but worth a discussion, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Good morning. I have a question for Dr. Garcia. I know there's efforts ongoing in Rotterdam and Colorado Hospital to standardize questionnaires. And is the GRIN scale project hooked into that? And can we as parents help with that?
Yes, so I don't understand very well your question. So you did something, you...
Well, I know there's centers of expertise being set up in Rotterdam and also in Colorado for GRIN.
Yeah.
So there will be a lot of data coming in there from GRIN patients. And I wonder if the GRIN scale is going to be used there. And if not yet, can we help to get it to be used?
Sure. Yeah. Once we have it complete, maybe, we can apply that to this collection of patients and data, just to test or validate. I think that it will be, once we have the translation in the validation into the English scale, then for sure we can contact different centers, different doctors, just to work with them. It will be absolutely necessary. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just have a few online questions here from Sebastian Schmidt. For you, Dr. Garcia, I think it's for you. When will the GRIN scale become available to monitor effects of Elserin?
Yes, once it is validated and published and can be used by everybody, it will be useful to validate Elserin treatment, but other treatments that appear. It is one of the major goals of all scales. So yeah.
Just another follow-up question, just to clarify what you suggested. Until then, Vineland as the best fit for now. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Simon Searchlight does have the Vineland within our registry. And then researchers, when they access the data, they can access that Vineland. It's de-identified, but they can access the community's Vinelands.
Morning. I'm hiding behind the pillar here. Sorry. Hi. Just a very basic question. As parents, we obviously are very much in the dark, and I think Simon Searchlight, etc., is very helpful in many respects, as is the great advances in finding cases. We were in the UK and were part of the 100,000 Genome Project, for example, and we had the impression that suddenly there were many more cases that were discovered. Whereas previously nobody knew what a daughter had, and people saying this possibly Angelman-like, these sorts of things, and we followed a lot of the Angelman conferences before we knew that she had GRIN2B. I'm just wondering where we're at in terms of discovering the number of cases in Europe or in the world, indeed, and how this is helping your research in terms of getting that critical mass.
Sorry, was that?
I don't know who's going to take this one, but I'm not a specialist.
Well, that is a really big question, because there's two sides of this problem that we always discuss at Simon Searchlight. One of them is this identification and access to genetic testing, exactly like you're describing. That is so tricky. And in terms of our study, it's outside the realms of getting more testing for people. We do attend genetic conferences and try to express importance to the genetics community, the genetic counselors, the medical geneticists, to send individuals our way when they get a diagnosis. Families often could feel lost, or here's your diagnosis, see you never, I don't know, or see you later. So finding the community and finding a place for the next steps of what parents can do once you get that diagnosis is really what we've been discussing. But access to genetic testing has been increasing. And we've seen a really big increase in registration, at least. So we read this almost as like an increase in genetic testing, especially after the pandemic. I think a lot of services were halted or slowed. But we've had a great increase, which is, we're thinking more and more access, but also to say the global aspect of making things multilingual is kind of what we're thinking is very important for these rare communities, and also patient advocacy. So what I mean by that is, even if we make it in multiple languages, we find expressing the importance of research participation is so challenging, and getting it to be a higher priority item on a family's list when they have so many other things to do in a day for their family member. We find that it's really important within the community to promote the research that the community needs, or that the community identifies as a need, has really changed for our research study in the communities where we do have a partnership with the patient advocacy organization. So I don't know if that touches upon all the ways that we look at it, but it's a very complex issue and important one.
Can I go? Yeah, all right. Good morning. I'm Hilke Bruning from Amsterdam. I have a very basic question. I'm not sure whether it will lead us anywhere, but I'm going to try it anyway. The history of Simon's Foundation obviously is the ascertainment for autism. And the list you bring, so is candidate or high confidence gene for autism, that's the starting point. Can you maybe comment on the, especially for maybe the non-medical people here, what is your opinion about that, for instance, GRIN to be only a fraction will be diagnosed with autism, vice versa? All these genes expand in many other conditions. So what's the future of Simon's Foundation in terms of this autism identity versus a broader neurodevelopmental view?
So Simon's Foundation in general, the foundation has been running long before Simon Searchlight or the branch, the Safari branch, the Simon's Foundation Autism Research Initiative. It has been a granting organization since the 90s. So it's always had interest in funding basic research in math, astronomy, and physics, because the founder was a physician mathematician. And it diverted into this autism research in the mid 2000s. And it actually started as the Simon's VIP study, where we thought that the most common cause of autism that will be genetic is the 16p11.2 duplication and deletion condition. Simon Simplex is how it actually even first started. Anyways, all that to say is the study has evolved from Simon Simplex actually to Simon's VIP. Spark, this autism first study was in 2015. It was way later. So it continues to evolve. And as of right now, Simon Searchlight does look at our genes as having a link to autism, but we more look at it as genes that are important in brain development and how it develops in that person to make connections so that the features, because autism is a clinical diagnosis of a set of features, whereas this is obviously a genetic diagnosis, we look at it as being important in brain development. So that's what we are really prioritizing our genes as this neurodevelopmental space. But I think that's more where autism has been moving in the last few years, is that these are not necessarily autism genes, although some are looked at as more high confidence autism genes. Most of them don't have 100% diagnosis of autism. There's always some sort of range.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was a very long historical. It's a lot of history there.
Hi, hear me? Do you hear me? Yeah. I have a question about the evaluation of patients in the L-Serene trial or in like the GRIN scale. Is there some objective measures, or is it only based on subjective observations like questionnaires?
Yeah, what we did in the Elserin trial, Dr. Natalia Julia will explain yesterday, but it is a set of tests that are, are objective based also on the questions of the patients, but also what we see in the clinical examination. I mean, it is true that there is some room for non-objective things because parents want probably that the treatment that we are given that will help in the patients, and maybe they are too optimistic, but because there are many items that are studied on the Vineland and the Elserin and the Baileys and the gross motor function in pediatric quality of life. So there are too many things and too many items and too many questions and evaluations to avoid a little bit this subjectivity, although a certain percentage of it's I mean, we cannot avoid a certain percentage of subjectivity, probably. It's also that the problem that we didn't use in the trial in particular, placebo group will be ideal to compare. But well, anyway, I mean, yeah, I think that there is enough evidence of support that the changes and the improvements that we found, I mean, are sustained by the tests that we apply to our patients. And in the scale, I think it will be also probably enough because like there are many questions in many domains. And I mean, we use at the beginning and in the Elserin trial, we wanted to utilize a very interesting tool that is EEG connectivity with a very like new device with high density EEG with 200 electrodes to detect all the connectivity map of the brain. And we did that at the beginning, but the machine just broke down and has a technical problem. We had to send the machine to the States to be to see what was happening and repair and so on. And we never got the machine back. So we had a very important problem, because it was like also something that could assess from an objective measure. There was like a change in the connectivity, in particular in executive areas or, but well, I think that we should include in our evaluation and in our clinical trials more and more objective tests that are not questionnaires, but like biomarkers, biological biomarkers that we don't have so far. But EEG, for instance, I think that is a very good candidate to do that in the future. Yeah.
We have time for two more short questions. One back here.
Oh, is it on? Oh, okay, there we go. Sorry. I hope this is short. This is for Dr. Vyklicky. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that right.
No, never mind. For me.
I'm a parent of a child with GRIN 2B. And I'm over here. Sorry.
Okay.
For us parents, we've been told that, well, from what we understand is what's really important to understand if it's a loss of function or a gain of function. And I guess that's more about the channel activity. But what your research and other research is starting to show is that it's not just about the loss or gain of function of the channel itself, but it's about the loss or gain of function of the gene expression, and then other important aspects of how it affects not just that, but like the surface expression, how it different effects on glutamate and glycine and all that stuff. For parents, how important is that for us to understand our child and how it would affect our child? And can we get that kind of testing done at that level?
Okay. When I was getting ready for the talk, I was thinking of being optimistic. And my sister always told me, if you can't be optimistic, be shut up. So it would be stupid to come in here and to be mute for half an hour. So I was trying to say some landmarks of the basic research that has to be overcome and evaluated prior rational design of drugs can be applied for treatment. So what I want to say that the basic research has to answer a number of questions, even for the compensatory changes. What actually happens in the brain? Are we actually able to cure the disease? If something happens during development, will a drug used when it's used in adulthood be able to compensate for such a change? Are animal models good to use in drug discovery, since we can't always recapitulate the changes? So this is basically the message from the basic research, and I hope that we somehow with the applied with the medicine move in between and help each other.